Good evening, everyone. It's Fola, and welcome to Living a You-Filled Life podcast, episode number 7. I'm so glad you could join me again for another lovely episode. Today, I wanted to talk to you about compassion, self-compassion. And it's been a little while since I've actually been on here, so I appreciate your patience with me. I'm having to have some self-compassion towards myself lately, actually, and perfect timing, I suppose. I had come from a conference not that long ago that was put on by Kristin Neff, who's a world-renowned PhD holder and studying self-compassion, the impact of mindfulness, and how being compassionate can really impact, how we're supporting others and how we're accepting things that are going on in our life. And I just found it really interesting. I actually was invited to this conference by some friends and coworkers, but prior to that, I had been doing some research on self-compassion and happened to just come across Kristin Neff's website and first her picture on another website, and then all of a sudden within a day or two I get invited to this conference, and I was like, oh well, maybe I should be heading out to hear what she has to say. So I would definitely encourage you to look up more at her website. I believe it's selfcompassion.org if you're interested. But some things that I came back with after this workshop was really about balancing life and balancing my view on how I can show compassion towards others, show compassion towards myself, and in a masculine way and a more feminine way. And the thing I found really interesting too was the morning I was going to the conference, I was just feeling so much irritation. I honestly can't even describe it. Like where it was coming from, I'm not sure. Sometimes I just wonder how much of it is like collective because there's like nothing was really going on in my personal life at that point in time. But as I'm driving to the conference, I was just like inside, I could just feel it like bubbling. And I'm sure you've all felt this yourselves in the past. Um, it comes and goes. We have to be equanimous to that feeling. Things are always going to come and go, these feelings, right? And that's a huge part about being compassionate is just accepting and being aware that, okay, I'm feeling this way and this is normal, right? Or this is part of the human experience. But before I went into the conference hall, I was just looking through Facebook, and I think there were like a couple posts from people I know and maybe someone I don't even really know. And I just made comments, and I just felt like my comments and their responses to my comments, everything just seemed super like irritable. And I just felt like I was being kind of like a bitch. If I could put it that way. Like and I just remember thinking like, why am I being so harsh? Though it didn't like if you were, I'm sure if I go back and read what I wrote, it wasn't like rude or that hurtful, but just something inside me just totally felt like I don't give a fuck. Like I'm gonna write whatever I want, and someone might not like it or they might not see it from my perspective, and I'm just going to say what my 2 cents are. And I mean, to those of you who know me, I am very much about living that life you desire, being authentic to yourself. But, at this point, it was like part of this like guilt inside of me expressing myself online in these ways. But I just recall thinking like, well, I'm trying my to express something in a way that I think will like be the most supportive or like encouraging to the person reading it or whoever reads it. Maybe though it just came across from my perspective as like kind of bitchy. So then I go into this conference and it's great to hear Kristin Neff, who has like an amazing, just like softness to her. Um, but she started to talk about this other aspect of self compassion. So when we talk about self-compassion, we're really looking at how we, you know, can support and show ourselves that we're like caring for ourselves, that we're understanding the situation from a place of like kindness towards self rather than being judgmental, right? Or being critical of ourselves with like a lot of negative internal dialogue. But we're also seeing that, hey, like this, like I said, is normal. It's part of the human experience. It's not just us that experience these feelings of irritability, like it's not just you individually, it's the whole, the collective. And that when we become mindful of this and just allow ourselves to kind of be in the presence of sometimes painful feelings or emotions instead of trying to avoid them completely, then we can come out of it in a more resilient way, right? It helps us overall with like our satisfaction in life, our happiness, confidence levels, things like that, right? So she talked though about the two different types of self compassion, if I can call them two different types. But, like as with anything, there's a positive, negative, the masculine, the feminine, and in the references she was using was the yin and the yang energies. So same yin being the more feminine, soft, sort of flowy part of self-compassion, and then the yang, which is that masculine, a bit more like hard way of being compassionate. And as soon as she like said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about it that way. Like, I've always just envisioned in my head that someone needs to express compassion towards others or even towards themselves in this very like soft, sort of nurturing, mothering way, which is great, right? It's really about just being present and like doing and feeling like comfort in that. But hearing her say there was the yang side, that more like fierce, action driven approach, one where maybe the person's being more motivating, engaging, and trying to protect in a way to whoever they're showing compassion to. It really helped me to just accept like this part of me, that part of me that was writing messages earlier in the car that seemed very kind of harsh, right? Or just like this fiery sort of way behind them. And it like just like I left that conference just feeling quite like at ease with myself, being more open to, hey, like you see again, Fola, remind yourself, seems like time and time again sometimes, that everyone has this light and this shadow side, these two different like polarizing sides, masculine, feminine, and we have to learn to accept all those parts of ourselves. And we have to know that each of those parts will have a time in which they need to come out to play, right? And so I would just encourage you to really be aware of how it is you're showing these different like energies in your life, whether it's through self compassion or not. And I think for myself, there's times when I feel like I'm quite goal oriented and driven, and that can have its positives and its negatives. But, that more action driven sense, there's nothing wrong with it. We need to balance it though with the more inflow, just being present, right? And so you really need to just be aware, observe what you're doing, where you're at with these energies, when it's maybe becoming too much on one side, and then asking yourself through like journaling or in a meditation, just how can I balance that more so that I can, so that you can become just more balanced, integrate everything more fully into your life, and that will help you to live your life in a more fulfilling way. So that's really what I wanted to come on here and talk about. I do feel like there's so much more I can discuss on self-compassion. Definitely, if you're interested, let me know. I can make some more episodes on that because we learned some great techniques to help you to become more self-compassionate in your life, to then help mirror that out to the world and share that with other people that you're engaging with who maybe have less of that ability to show compassion to themselves because of their situation, right? So, really, it's about us just showing love to ourselves, to others, being mindful, and aiming every day to just continue to evolve and expand in the best way that we know how. And I trust that all of you listening and everyone on this planet is doing the best that they can with what knowledge they have. So, from the bottom of my heart to yours, thank you so much for listening. And I will catch you all next time on the next episode of this wonderful podcast. Until then.